Hi friends, and welcome to your daily episode of Poverty Proof, How the Rich Think Differently and How You Can Train Your Brain for Wealth. My new book, Poverty Proof for Entrepreneurs, launches this week. I haven't seen one in the stores yet. If you happen to spot one ahead of me, won't you please take a photo and tag me on social media? Meanwhile, I'm working on the next book for Penguin, which will be published next year. And this will be by far my most comprehensive book on the topic of wealth versus poverty. It starts off by asking some questions about the fallacies in thinking that are popularly shared among people, and I start off by debunking as many of them as I can. Then we look at societal conditions, ideal societal conditions for wealth. And I'll give you the quick cheat sheet version of this one. You need freedom and rule of law. Rule of law entails upholding contracts and it entails property rights. If you have those basics in place, most societies will tend to flourish. Then I move on to you, the individual, beliefs, behaviors, and traits. And I look at some of the things that we covered in Poverty Proof, such as that the primary determinant of your upward or downward trajectory tends to be determined by work ethic and faithful maintenance of a family. Then I go one step further and I look at the behavioral norms of self-made millionaires. Now, there is a wealth of information available on this one, and comparing sources like aggregated information from Forbes magazine, from Harvard Business Review, CNBC.com. There was also an excellent article on this topic in the Sydney Morning Herald recently. And what they look at is the commonalities of personality and behavioral traits among the self-made rich. And one of these traits stands out in particular. And it's such a simple and such an obvious one, but it's one that you can do something about. Self-made millionaires tend to have massive levels of self-confidence. Now, I don't think that strikes anyone as a surprise, but when you start digging down into what it looks like behaviorally, one word keeps coming to the fore, and that is the word push. These are men and women with high levels of push. Now, that's not necessarily the same thing as saying pushiness. It's not necessarily that they are bad-mannered, although it's interesting to note that self-made wealthy people tend not to care very much what others think of them. That much is true. But no, push is the drive that gets things done. So the most obvious example of this one is you think of if you are starting your own business, if perhaps you're a salesperson, it's that kind of drive to sell things. However, it applies to the artistic temperament as well, and it also applies to the solo practitioner. And here we see the example of someone like, take Ed Sheeran, global pop star. Now, Ed Sheeran, we wouldn't think of as a classic salesperson or as a person who is building a business in that kind of stereotypical sense. However, go back through his life and you will see him even as a kid out there busking, playing his music. He's at pubs, he's on street corners, he is relentlessly pushing his musical career forward. And I think that's an interesting note, particularly for people who tend to think that they want to be artistic, they want to be purists. Ed Sheeran didn't sit at home being artistic and purist. Instead, he took what he does out on the street and relentlessly drove his musical career. So whether you're starting your own company, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, whether you're a salesperson or of an artistic bent, it is still that drive, that push that separates self-made millionaires from the rest of the world. So that's something that you can do something about. What big project do you need to drive in order to change your financial reality? It is that drive, it is that push that distinguishes the self-made millionaires of the world from everybody else. How much do you believe in what you are doing? How hard are you willing to push, and how relentlessly are you willing to drive it? People who practice self-doubt, who vacillate, who talk themselves in and out of projects are unlikely to reach those marks. It's the people who believe deeply in what they do and relentlessly push that tend to make it. What should you be pushing? This is not background work. This is something you must take out into the world and push forward. A lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of doing all the background work, the preparation, the things that don't engage with other people, but as we've covered before, it is only at the point of sale that you actually become wealthy. Drive it publicly, drive it relentlessly, and show the kind of push that genuinely creates self-made millionaires. You can change your destiny.